Hi, everybody. Ian Hill with SkullKing here. Sorry about the hiatus, but I had to have a little shoulder surgery with a torn labrum. Apparently, I'm a little too old to be playing in several sports leagues and should stick to writing. But typing has been a little bit of an issue, so we're going to give you a video update on wide receivers in the NFL that you should be picking up now that we're about 2 weeks in and coming up on Sunday for week 3. Mike Wallace. We all know Mike Wallace. We've heard of Mike Wallace, but where does Mike Wallace even play? Well, you don't know. He went to Baltimore to play with Joe Flacco and the 2015 leading passing offense, or at least attempts per game wise. Mike Wallace is second on the team in targets with 12 behind Steve Smith Sr., who's got 14. But he leads the team with 132 yards and is the only wide receiver with a touchdown with 3. Mike Wallace is clearly leading the pack in Baltimore. Steve Smith is about 900 years old and, just isn't that dependable anymore. And Kamar Aiken has fallen off the map over there. So if Mike Wallace is available in your league, go get him. Currently in ESPN, he is available in 73.8% of leagues. So plenty of you out there have a duty to go pick him up on your team, especially if you need a wide receiver. Tyrell Williams in San Diego. With Keenan Allen going down with a torn ACL, that opened the door for Travis Benjamin to move into that number 1 slot, giving Tyrell Williams the number 2. Even more interesting is that now Antonio Gates is listed as doubtful for this Sunday, giving Phillip Rivers less targets to throw to. Tyrell Williams is doing all right. Last game, 6 targets, 61 yards, and a touchdown. So he's no slouch out there, and he's currently sitting available in over 38% of leagues in ESPN. With the limited number of options that Rivers has to, and especially Danny Woodhead also out with a torn ACL, expect Williams to have quite a nice uptick in targets, especially with his explosive ability and being one of the only options. Phillip Rivers is a heck of a quarterback and can definitely throw, so don't expect more running from Gordon. Expect more targets to Williams and Benjamin. Pick them up. Next on the list of players to pick up this week, Phillip Dorsett in Indianapolis. Dante Moncrief is now out for Sunday, moving Dorsett into that number 2 slot behind T.Y. Hilton. Hilton has been listed questionable all year, and Dorsett is healthy. So that is certainly a good chance for Dorsett to see an uptick in some of his statistics. Currently sitting at 11 targets, 5 receptions, but 124 receiving yards for the season. So he's doing all right through 2 games, and if he can continue this trend, he might be able to take over that number 2 spot over Moncrief altogether. He's currently available in 52% of ESPN leagues, and he's got all the talent and skills in the world. So don't be surprised if after a couple of games he actually might move into that number 2 slot in Indy, especially with question marks regarding Hilton and Moncrief moving forward. Next on the list is Quincy Enunwa with the New York Jets. Frankly, if Ryan Fitzpatrick keeps throwing for 30-plus attempts and even remotely scrapes the 374 yards he had against the Bills, there's going to be plenty to go around between Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, and Enunwa. Now, Enunwa is 3rd in targets, clearly, with 14 on the team, but Decker only has 15 and Brandon Marshall is 17, so he's not that far behind. Plus, he's already has 146 receiving yards and a touchdown on the season. So he's well on his way to having quite a good season and is available in 62% of ESPN leagues. The kid's got great hands and he has great chemistry with Fitzpatrick. You put a question mark on Brandon Marshall in that knee, and you very well could have a nice little sleeper there in Enunwa. Next on the list is Tyler Boyd in Cincinnati. Now, we all know A.J. Green, and he's always in that conversation of who is the best wide receiver in the NFL, not named Antonio Brown. But in Cincinnati, who's number 2? There's a lot of hype behind Boyd, and they brought in Brandon LaFell. But in my opinion, LaFell hasn't done a whole lot in the last couple years in his career to really merit that number 2 slot. Enter Tyler Boyd. Now, Boyd on the year has 11 targets, 8 receptions, and 102 yards. not bad. That's already sitting at an average of 816 yards for the season if he continues to play that way. LaFell is doing all right himself, 12 targets, 7 receptions, 130 yards. But again, LaFell's resume speaks for itself that he probably won't continue that trend and all of a sudden be a 1,000-yard receiver. So I would give it up to Boyd, especially since Boyd is available in 78% of leagues in ESPN. Now, in deeper leagues, or if you want to go get a sleeper, if you have a deep bench, pick up Tyler Boyd. Eventually, those double teams on A.J. Green are going to pay off, and I really feel like Brandon LaFell is going to LaFell off toward the end of the year. Now, I know I said earlier in the year that Dez Bryant was going to be a bust. I still think that in comparison to Dez's previous years, this is going to be a bust, especially with rookie quarterback Dak Prescott coming in, not knowing if Romo will ever play again, and just gaining a new chemistry with the new quarterback. So I still stick by that sentiment, but the interesting thing here is Cole Beasley. Now, Cole has 18 targets, 13 receptions, and 140 yards through 2 games already. He's developed a great chemistry with Prescott and is averaging 9 targets per game. So if that stays anywhere near where it's been already, expect Cole Beasley to actually come out and have a great year. I know Tyrell Williams is also an option out there, but Beasley has become the front runner for that number 2 slot behind Dez. With Jason Witten getting older, Dez getting double teamed, I expect to see a lot more Prescott to Beasley connections. So pick up Cole Beasley. He's available in 87% of ESPN leagues. Talking about Chicago Bears receivers is always a tough subject because you have to talk about the inconsistency of Jay Cutler. We all know about Alshon Jeffrey, one of the elite receivers in the NFL. Kevin White comes into the league with a lot of hype, having missed last year with the shin injury and not living up to expectations through the preseason first 2 games. Lots of problems with drops and just not appearing to be that player that he was in West Virginia yet. Not saying stay away from White, but you're going to want to give him a little bit more time. However, one of the more productive folks on the Chicago Bears is Eddie Royal. Royal is second on the team with 12 targets. He's got 8 receptions, 109 yards, and a punt return touchdown, as well as a receiving touchdown. A lot of energy is spent on defenses guarding against Jeffrey and Kevin White. Kevin White is explosive, and you give him room, he can score. But that leaves a lot of room for Eddie Royal to come in with screen passes, the underneaths, and even some punt returns if you have return yardage. So Eddie Royal is a really interesting pick, and I particularly like him as taking over quietly for Kevin White as that number 2 receiver until White proves to be that he's worth what all the hype is for. Eddie Royal is available in 90% of ESPN leagues. So he's worth picking up. If he doesn't do anything, you didn't lose a whole lot, but he could end up being a very big boom on very little in a second week pickup. Last on the list is an absolute banger bust. Available in 99% of ESPN leagues, Marquise Goodwin of the Buffalo Bills. This is one of those picks that if it works out, you can show off to your friends and remind them how you picked up Marquise Goodwin in the third week of 2016. Now, Sammy Watkins, according to Rex Ryan, is, quote, probably not real good to play this Sunday, and somebody's going to need to fill in. We saw glimpses of what Goodwin can do, being one of the fastest players in the NFL when he had 5 targets, 112 yards, and a touchdown against the New York Jets when he just flat out ran everybody. Again, available in 99% of leagues, this might be a good pick to put on your bench. Watkins deals with injuries every year, and there's no clear receiver to come take over his spot. You've got Greg Salas, who has 6 targets, 4 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown this year. But there's no true number 2 on that team, so it's anybody's game if Watkins is out for any amount of time, which we've seen can happen quite a bit. So if you want to take a long shot at one, pick up Marquise Goodwin. I already have in my leagues, and you know, it might very well work out with Watkins being out. So pick him up. Thanks again for having a little patience with me updating you. I will get better, but until I am able to use my arm, I will be doing some video updates every few days for you on who to pick up, who to drop, and everything else you need to know about wide receivers in the fantasy realm. Until then, this is Ian Hill with SkullKing signing off.